Hello and welcome to It's Your Health. My name is Kimberley Haas. I am joined today with Joe Raulinaitis of the Food and Drug Administration. He has been kind enough to help me do this series of programming to teach everybody at home a little bit about what the Food and Drug Administration does. I'm also joined by Paul Raish. He's a health officer with the Public Health Department for the town of Derry, and Lieutenant Bill Gillis. He is with the Derry Fire Department. Welcome to the program today, gentlemen.
It's great to be here. Thank you.
I'll have everybody start by introducing themselves to the audience, telling everybody at home a little bit about yourself. Will help them understand your perspective as we start the conversation. I'll have you start, Joe.
Sure. Kim, I'm Joe Raulinaitis, Public Affairs Officer for the New England District Office of the FDA. My job is getting the FDA's overall message on consumer awareness, health protection out to the 6-state region, and it's great to be here.
Thank you very much. Paul, maybe you could tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yes, I've been working in the food protection program for 25 years, and 4 years ago I started working here in the town of Derry. I inspect all the restaurants, schools, cafeterias, and grocery stores in the town.
And Bill?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm Bill Gillis. I'm a lieutenant with the Derry Fire Department, and I've been with the organization about 18 years. So I've had the opportunity to experience many disasters here in the community, not only out there responding to emergencies, but in emergency management as well.
Now, Bill, we're going to start the conversation with you today because, as we know, September is Emergency Preparedness Month. So we want everybody who is in the area and watching the program to know a little bit more about what to do. It's a great time of year to talk about this subject. As I was saying before we went to air, I saw my first good squirrel fight of the season, which is always an indicator to me that it's time to start to make winter preparations, checking my vehicle out, checking that battery, things of that nature. Maybe you could talk with us a little bit about what people in town should be doing to prepare for upcoming storms, hurricane or ice storms, or just general winter storms, and what you folks are doing in the fire department to help everybody prepare for that as well.
Yes, this time of year, one of our greatest hazards here in New England, obviously, is severe winter weather. And as we know, in the past, we've had severe ice storms, which have been quite debilitating to the community. So as we enter the cold winter months, we want everybody to first be informed and be prepared. That means watch the weather, pay attention to the weather. Look at our website when there's severe weather coming for information, storm-related information, and just make preparations before the storm actually hits, because being prepared is the biggest thing you can do. And then beyond that is, again, have a good plan for your family, have a communications plan, have an emergency kit, and have a good support network, especially for those that are elderly or disabled.
Now, when you say a good communications plan with your family, what does that truly mean?
Well, it means if something was to happen during the middle of the day, during the school hours, know what, the contact numbers for your children at school. Make sure that the school has your contact numbers at home. With the elderly, make sure that they can reach their support, who's ever in their support network, whether it be family or what have you, that they have all the possible numbers that they can get in touch with you. And even within that communications plan, it comes at establish a meeting place. If this was to happen, this is where I will be if we can't communicate. So it's things like that you do ahead of time before the storm hits or the event occurs that really starts things rolling, because everybody gets confused. Somebody can't get home because the trees are down, can't reach them because the power's out. Where do we go? They're not going to have enough food. So a lot of that preparation piece is really important, and that's where people find themselves in trouble after a big storm or after a severe emergency, is that they can't sustain themselves for a period of time after.
Right, and I remember a few years ago when there was an ice storm that was a real problem. There were some major lines down in town, some roads were impassable, and people were having a hard time not only making sure they had the food and the water they needed, but also things like prescription drugs were becoming an issue. What do you find here on the local level that works best for you when you're telling an average family what they'll need to prepare? How many days food, how many days water, things like that? that nature?
The general rule of thumb is 72 hours self-sufficiency. In a large disaster, it's impossible for the fire department or any other emergency services organization in the community in a large-scale disaster to reach everybody at once. So it's impossible for us to meet everybody's needs. We're going to prioritize where we go and how we conduct our work to save the greatest amount of life, to protect the greatest amount of property. That's just a fact of life. So that 72-hour window is you need to prepare yourself. Food, water, medications, things to keep you warm. And what happens in the winter is that everybody's freezing. It's cold. The water freezes. You freeze, and that's what makes it exceptionally dangerous. You can't leave because your street's blocked from power lines, and it's critically important that you prepare for that. And we have seen people getting better prepared since the last couple ice storms we've had over the past few years, and that brings a whole other series of consequences that we're now seeing in the community with emergency generators in the homes.
Yeah, it seems like a lot more people have decided to go ahead and get a generator. Now, if people don't opt to get a generator, because I know a lot of people can't afford them, what are some good safety tips that you can give them? Like, I remember a couple years ago, a big thing was no barbecues in the garage to keep warm, because there are other safety issues that come up when people start to do that. What are some things that people can remember that if they don't have a generator, it's going to be a while, they're getting cold, what can you do?
Right, and even if you have a generator, carbon monoxide, we see a very large increase in carbon monoxide incidents during these winter storms where we have prolonged power outages. And that's because people are using their wood stove more to be relied on as their primary heat source, which can result, if it's not properly cared for, it can result in a fire or carbon monoxide buildup within the home. We have people using alternative heating sources, such as kerosene heaters, propane heaters. They all generate, anything that burns fossil fuels is going to generate carbon monoxide. And that's that deadly silent killer. And you want to make sure that you're doing that stuff outside, that if you are using heaters, that they're being used properly, that they're vented properly, and that they're maintained properly. And especially if you're using your generator, emergency generator, that it's outside. It's not in the garage. It's not up next to your window, that it's wired properly, that it's installed in a way that's safe for your family.
Yeah, it's really, really important that everybody tries as best as they can to be safe. And I find that one of the best ways to stay safe during an event is to check things ahead of time. I'm one of those people, and I hate to admit it, but I will take the flashlight batteries out of my mini flashlights for my remote control if I don't feel like walking to the store. And that is such a bad thing to do. It's such a bad thing to do. And I hope that everybody at home, especially now that it's going to be colder, will take the moment to make sure their flashlights are working, to make sure their generators are hooked up properly, to make sure they do have oil for their lamps if they need it for light in an emergency, and that they have a couple of extra candles and things around, because it does get hard to navigate from room to room all the time, especially if you have a couple of people in your unit. You want to make sure that everybody has all of the supplies that they individually need. Now, in an emergency situation, what's the best thing for people to do? I know that usually there's a hotline established. Should people look for that number and use that number to contact the fire department if they have issues that are related to the emergency, as opposed to emergency issues that would require medical attention? Right,
and leading up to a storm, the town makes a great effort to provide information ahead of the storm. So Channel 17 is a great source of information prior to the storm and during a storm, as well as the town's internet website, homepage is a great place to get information. Once the storm gets ramped up and we realize that it's going to be a scope of outside of what is our normal operating capacity is, we'll open up the Emergency Operations Center in town. And what that does is bring in all the departments to work together and manage the incident globally. And usually when we do that, we establish a hotline, and that purpose of that hotline is to provide information to the community. That doesn't replace 911. We encourage every resident that they have a medical emergency or a fire emergency or a police emergency that they use 911. But we usually will establish a hotline where people can call for general information about the storm, road closures, and those sort of things. We also try to send out information through some of the more large-scale media in the state, WMUR, WZID, some of those other stations. The problem is, in a large-scale disaster, they're getting so much information from everywhere. They try to do their best to get the most up-to-date information, but really the most up-to-date information you're going to get is going to be from inside this community and from the emergency operations centers directly. So for the citizens to pay attention to the media outlets that we're using internally here in the community, Channel 17, the website, our AM radio. We also have a Twitter account that people can sign up for. We'll send a lot of tweets out that way, and so that way we can share that information, and you can share information with us.
Right, and the statewide media outlets that are available to the residents of New Hampshire are wonderful, and that includes the newspapers as well. But I can speak from personal experience working as a correspondent for the Union Leader. After a couple of days with a news story, people, especially if they're not in the community that's widely affected, get kind of tired of it. So after reporting on a major event for 3 or 4 days, there's just not as much interest. So it's really best to make sure that you know those numbers for those local officials, and that you stay on things like Watching 17 and like you said, the Twitter and the different things that are established specifically for the residents of Derry, because Derry does tend to get hard hit, and there are some places in town where if power goes down, it could be 7 to 10 days before power is reestablished.
And the other thing, Kimberly, is that we do have Code Red, which is an interactive community notification system, which we have a database with everybody's phone numbers in it that we can geographically send out messages by telephone automatically in a very short period of time. And that also allows the citizens to go through the town's webpage through the Code Red link, and it allows them to add additional numbers to that. So if they want to have their cell phone number or an alternative number, that it allows them, when we send out an emergency message, that they can get those in other places other than their phone. So we encourage everybody in the community to sign up through Code Red to verify their information to make sure it's in there, because that's a great way for us to send out messages to the community very quickly.
Thank you, Bill. And if you have signed up for Code Red, make sure after you watch the show that your emergency information is updated. A lot of times cell phone numbers change, things of that nature. So we want to make sure that everybody has the most up-to-date information on that. And we're going to segue now into Paul's segment. He's going to talk a little bit more about the restaurant end of it, because we've talked about the individual homeowner in Derry. Let's talk a little bit more about the businesses in Derry when they're affected by an emergency event.
Thank you. Well, the restaurants are affected by these events, and it's important that they contact the Derry Health Department as soon as there has been a stoppage in their electricity or a fire or a sewage backup. Any of these sort of events, they are required to call the Derry Health Department to inform us of that. We would make an inspection of the establishment and determine what needs to be discarded. This helps the restaurant owner in that if he wants to, if he has insurance and wants to make a claim on the insurance, he has the actual documentation from the health officer that the food had to be discarded. One thing that we've noticed that more and more people in the restaurant business now have generators, and they are prepared for these sort of power outages. Or they will have another site, such as 7-Eleven may have 2 stores, as they do here in Derry, and one store may have electricity, so that the other store could bring their products to the other 7-Eleven, so they're not losing as much of their food. Some of the bigger bought stores, such as your Shaw's or Hannaford's, they have refrigerator trucks, and they can put most of their perishable products inside these refrigerator trucks for safekeeping.
So if something like that happens, is there a number that these business owners should call? Where would they find that information? On the town's website?
Yes, it'd be on the town website, but I can give you the number. It is 845-5519.
So 845-5519.
That's what they should call.
Okay, so that's really good for people to know. I know that's usually a concern.
Can last in a freezer. One thing that I should mention is that you should never open the refrigerator or the freezer while the temperature, while the electricity is out. But as soon as it is restored, you should check the temperatures and check to see if the frozen food is still frozen. And that information will help you to determine whether or not it should be discarded or you can still use it.
So once the power goes out, you're not supposed to open the refrigerator door at all?
That's correct.
So what should people do in order to make sure they have some of the supplies that they might be able to use for the course of the next couple days?
So you're talking about what should they eat? How can they access the food that they're saving? Obviously, you have to open the refrigerator to access these foods. It should be done as quickly as possible. You should think about exactly what you want and where you've probably got it stored in the refrigerator, and remove it quickly and shut the door quickly.
Yeah, and that's important for the homeowners and for the people that are in the businesses too, because I know a lot of times, you know, a restaurant or a small business will go ahead and try to salvage, you know, food quickly by putting it into coolers and stuff like that. I didn't know that the recommendation was just to leave everything shut as much as possible.
That's correct. And as I said, they should check the temperature when the power is restored. That information is good for me to know, because then I'll know how far it was above or the required temperatures, and it could very much determine whether or not the food will have to be discarded or could be kept.
Very, very important, and a really great perspective. Thank you very much, Paul.
You're welcome.
So Joe, let's talk a little bit about what people can do, what individuals can do, because we've raised a lot of concerns. So now I want some solutions to these problems, because I don't want everybody to be worried, but I do want everybody to be prepared. I know you brought with you an emergency backpack. Maybe we could talk a little bit about what everybody should make sure they have at home.
Sure. Well, you know, it's great to hear Paul and Bill talk about what's happening here in Derry. It sounds like this city really has its act together. But you and I listen to the news, we're news junkies, and you have these wildfires out west, and you have people in their cars talking to the camera crews and indicating that they have left their house in such a hurry that they don't even have a toothbrush. They just weren't prepared. And I'm encouraged to listening to Lieutenant and Paul. It seems like Derry has really got a plan here. It's a major thing. It's a major concern. In the past century, Kim, this area has been hit by 40 major tropical storms / hurricanes, and that doesn't even count the countless winter storms, which can be really devastating to the infrastructure on New Hampshire city. There's no doubt about it. So we're prone to get these emergencies from time to time, and the FDA looks at it. We like to break things down into segments. We like people to be prepared, as the lieutenant said, prior to an emergency. The worst time to prep for an emergency is when it's happening. You can't do it, doesn't work. So we want people to realize that you should have, and it doesn't cost you much time or much money to have food, dry goods, water, all in some storage capacity. You can go to any of your major big box stores, buy those plastic containers, which are ideal for storing food and water. The average person needs, Kim, on the average of an adult, about 1,800 calories per meal per day. In an emergency situation, you might want to, consider a little bit less because, the convenience of food intake isn't really there. But you ought to have that per day per person. Set aside, as the lieutenant said, for 3 to 5 days. There's a lot of moving parts in an emergency, and you don't always have the convenience to rush out to the grocery store and get what you need. So 3 to 5 days is a good window of safety to prep for a time when you can't get access to your food sources. That said, if you have a major store of food and water set aside, you're looking real good. There are 2 philosophies for dealing with a storm, and it also depends on the environmental conditions. You can weather in place, and that's where your food supply that you've stored away, put away safely, really comes into play, or you can leave and go to a shelter. Now, if you have to leave your facilities and move out of the area to an area where more conveniences, medical care is available, more professionals to take care of you. It's not a bad part of the equation, but you have to put into the mindset here that you may be on the road in a storm for 12 or 14 hours just getting out of a troubled area. That's where the sort of the go bag comes into play that you mentioned. This is sort of a representative emergency relief bag that I put into place. And some of these bits of information have been put out earlier. You talked about the need for light. We do need light. A flashlight with extra batteries is imperative. It's one of the most important things you can have, because when the electricity goes out in 1985, when Gloria swept through New England, we had 2 million people in the 6-state New England area without power for hours upon hours upon hours. That's where an artificial source of light is a real big player. It's a really important thing to have. Another thing which is always really important, and your viewers should realize this, is have your medicines available. If you're on the road, if you're away from home, you're a diabetic, you suffer from high blood pressure, it's really important to have your medications at hand. It doesn't mean you have to pack them away in your go bag, but know where they are so you can grab them and go in a hurry. Your medications are really, really important.
So keep them all in one safe spot.
It's not a bad idea. That's a great idea. And someplace where you or your family knows where they are. The dry goods, representative dry goods, your crackers with high sugar, high caloric value is not a bad thing. These don't go bad. They last forever. They may not taste the best, but they're good to have in an emergency. There's not a problem there at all. Another thing we should never forget either is toiletry items. It's not, an emergency is a tough situation. You don't have all the luxuries you want, at your beck and call. But, bandages and your shaving gear, your toothbrush is not a bad thing to have. Soap isn't a bad thing to have either. It's nice to have your toiletry gear and your medical kit also at hand as well. And you can make these. You can buy these at your big box stores, or you can grab a baggie and put a few together on the side and have them at your disposal. Not a bad idea also.
Add deodorant to that for all the people going to the shelters.
This is true. Deodorant is an imperative, an important thing to have. And one thing...
Just kidding. That's the least important thing in a real emergency, but I had to throw it in there.
It's a luxury item. And another thing that's really important, and we tend to overlook that, our pets are an important part of our life. There's no doubt about it. One thing you should always realize that not all shelters will accept a pet. Maybe if it's a guide dog or an assistant living animal, they probably will, but not all pets are going to be welcome into a shelter. You should try to make arrangements beforehand to place your pet in the proper, survival mode, so it's okay whether you put extra food at the house for it to live on and use while you're away, or put it into a pet hotel or pet motel, and they have those around, I'm sure, or a clinic or a veterinarian area to keep it in place and well. And also, if you're going to bring your cat or your dog with you, bring its food and its medication if it needs it as well. It's another sort of important thing because they're sort of part of the family, and survival for them is also an important part of the equation. So a go bag doesn't take much time to pack. It doesn't cost a lot of money. I'm sure that the lieutenant and Paul can back me up. It's a good thing to have. Draw from your main supply of food at your house. Take some time to think it through. Water is such a major part of the equation, because when your good potable water is not available, bottled water is the key to the future, because we all need moisture, we all need to be the nutrition from water. It's a really important part of the equation. So dry goods, water, your medications, your toiletries, even your pet food are a real major part of a go bag in a situation like that. It doesn't take a lot of time to put it together. There is guidance on the web. You go to the FDA website, www.fda.gov/hurricane preparation. You get a lot of guidance. I'm sure that the fire department here and Paul's people can also give you guidance on what to look for, or what to put together, and how to, frame a mindset about surviving a major winter storm or a major hurricane. The old "it can't happen here" mentality defeats us all. It puts us in a rather unrealistic mindset, doesn't allow us really to prepare for these situations. So preparation prior to is so key to surviving and coming out comfortably. It's a major deal.
Yeah, and I mean, people, of course, want to focus most on the storms that are most likely to happen here. The flooding, the ice and snowstorms that we have, the hurricanes. But there is a real possibility for disaster. And if disaster did strike, I mean, we have traffic on 93 now at 3 to 5 o'clock, just average traffic. But imagine if everybody from Boston was evacuating, how many days it would even get you to get into another region. So you really do have to have the food and the water at hand and the different supplies that you would need just to be in your car. What's your viewpoint on actually putting a go bag into your vehicle? Is that recommended or not?
It's a great idea. I'm glad you brought that up. I would have forgotten it. It's not a bad idea. You ought to divide them up. You can go to any Army surplus store, any sporting goods store, get inexpensive nylon backpacks. Backpacks are sort of like part of the uniform of the day anyway. You can get them anywhere. They're not expensive. You can break them down for the size of the adult or the child in the family, and you can have your children pack their own go bag. Give them a little list. Have them go about the house. Go to the major store and get what they need. You can talk to the professionals and get, as I said, get some guidance from them. It's not a bad idea, Kim, to have a go bag in your vehicle, in case you need it, or really readily available in a place where you know how to reach it at the house. Once again, it's preparing for a disaster, which really does ensure your capacity to endure and survive it. You mentioned the traffic on the major highways. There's nothing worse than dealing with a major crisis which upsets everybody. It's a change of venue, you're out of your element, your comfort element is gone, and having an empty stomach. It's just, it's a lose-lose situation. So you look at your mental health, your physical health, your nourishment factor, your requirement for medicine and even cosmetics. It's all part of the big picture. It's what the federal government really stresses nowadays in preparation to confront and deal with any emergencies. We live in interesting times. We really do. There's no doubt about it. And so it's just good to be aware of what you can do to guarantee that you enjoy the interesting times to the maximum, I suppose.
Exactly, and we do have to be aware as a town of the fact that we are so close to Boston. If something happened in Boston, we would have to face certain evacuation routes and things like that too. So make a plan, and not just for the things that are most realistic, but like Bill said, talk to your family about what you would do if real emergency did happen and you did have to leave, and if you did have to take all of those precautions. Are you ready? I hope that everybody is kind of like those squirrels that I saw out there with their nuts, getting prepared for the winter, making sure they have everything they need, making sure the stuff that they do have is not expired or old. That's really important, because a lot of times we do something and then before we know it, it's 3 years later. So I definitely thank you, gentlemen, for coming in today. I really appreciate all of your time, your perspective. Paul, it was excellent from the business end of it and then from the state end and how the town deals with it. Bill, we really appreciate anytime we get the opportunity to talk to you. You're one of our favorites, and you're really a great person to speak on behalf of the town of Derry and what happens in emergency situations. And Joe, I've been having so much fun doing this series. I mean, I think it's great, and I think that we have a lot of stuff that the people in town need to know about and in the bigger region. So that's why we're going to add our show, It's Your Health, to our new YouTube channel that we're starting here with Derry Community Television. It's going to be 17 and 23 DTV. It's just getting started, so there's not much up there yet, but there will be real soon. We really appreciate your viewership today, and we look forward to seeing you again next time. Once again, my name is Kimberley Haas. Have a great day.